Welcome to my tutorial for Ninja Gaiden for the Sega Master System. And yeah, to start off, I'm going to show you a very easy way to get unlimited ammo, and it carries over through all your deaths and your infinite continues that you have. So what you want to do is collect the NINPO ammo, which is in these little scrolls, and you'll see it located on the upper left corner. It says N140. That's how much ammo you have for your NINPO, which is your magic. So what you want to do is you want to get that up to 999. It's at 140 right now, as you can see. So collect the 2 scrolls and then commit suicide in the spikes below, which you'll eventually see me do. At this point, I didn't know where it was all located. I wanted to see if I could collect more before suiciding. But I'm going to show a little bit of this process, but I edit it down because there's no need to show me doing this for... I think it takes anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to get it up to 999. Once you get it up to 999 ammo, it locks in to infinite ammo for your NINPO. And it's a completely legit trick, but it's good to do it at the beginning of the game to get it over with. That way you can get whatever magic you want, and then you never have to pick up another scroll for the rest of the game. In fact, I'm going to recommend avoiding all the scrolls as you play this. You know, once you have the magic that I recommend, the homing magic, I recommend avoiding all the pickups in the game. You get infinite continues, and when you continue, you start at a pretty forgiving checkpoint. The game has pretty forgiving checkpoints, so it's really not that hard aside from a few, fairly difficult platforming parts that are a little tricky. But all the bosses are very easy with the strategies I'm going to show. So just follow what I do, and you'll have no problem beating this game. Now if you're newer to these types of games, then it may be harder. But if you have played the Ninja Gaiden games on the NES, this game is the easiest one by far. It's quite easy for this type of game, relative to these older games. I actually got to the last boss many years ago, and it was a brick wall for me. I could not beat it, but I didn't know about the NINPO. I think I was trying to fight it with just the sword, the final form, and I could barely hit the thing. It was brutal. But luckily, I'll spare you all that. If you follow what I'm doing here, you shouldn't have any problems. The main thing, if you do decide to pick up other weapons and try them, other NINPO magic, see this one goes up and left to right. It fires in a cross pattern. It's not bad, but there's a much better one. And once I get it, I keep it for the rest of the game. But if you do decide to switch NINPO, just make sure that you get the homing one back before the end of the game, because you don't want to get stuck with one of the other ones. Because the strategy I show is specific to that homing NINPO that I get, very specific to that magic. So if you have something else, you may have to play it differently. This is the homing NINPO that I was talking about. Now, to use the NINPO magic, you hold up and hit the sword button. So it's kind of like Castlevania with the sub-weapons. You hit up in the sword button and you will use your NINPO. So if you want to use it rapidly, you just hold up and mash the sword button and you'll just keep firing it out. Now at this point I have 999, and you see it does not go down when I use it. And even after I lose all my lives and waste continues, it never goes down. And of course, you have unlimited continues, as I said, but you can still, you go through them, but they don't drain or anything. You just keep continuing until you win. But yeah, so the way I like to play most of the game with the homing NINPO is I throw it out and then I move forward, because it'll follow as you move the screen. The NINPO will home in on the first available enemy. It prevents you from getting knocked into pits a lot of times. So you're going to see me do that a lot. I didn't play this game a lot, as it only took me an hour and 20 minutes to beat. So, for example, this was my first time getting to this boss recently. So I didn't have any memory of what to do on the boss. But all I did was go up here and spam this shit. Super easy. The homing NINPO will home in on the boss. So as long as you can find safe spaces, you can pretty much destroy all the bosses very easily. I'm going to be doing this technique for most of the bosses. I beat most of the bosses on the first try. So when you see the video, you're going to see me kind of mess up in the beginning on a lot of the bosses, because I just got to them and I didn't know what to do right away. I edited out all the deaths for the most part. I show some deaths in the beginning to show the farming technique to get the 999 ammo. But aside from that, all the other deaths are edited out. So you'll see, I just kind of slowly inch the screen and fire out my homing, and then I move with the homing projectiles. I move with them. By doing that, if any enemies show up, it'll immediately target the enemies. Now, some enemies do take 2 hits, especially later on. So with the enemies that take 2 hits, you want to move a little slower and make sure you get both hits in. Because you want the enemies to be out of your way. That's kind of the purpose of using this. Moving the screen with it. That's pretty much what I ended up doing immediately. So a lot of sections I had no practice on. So what you're seeing a lot of times is me beating these areas on my first try. So I was just playing very carefully and just kind of inching the screen, to try to get the homing weapon to home in on the first enemies that appear. So a lot of this is very unpracticed. But I did beat it like in an hour and 20 minutes. After I found out about this unlimited NINPO trick, I found it out in about a video, I think Sega Lord X video or something like that. I found out about it. So I decided, it was time to revisit this game and beat it. Because I did want to beat this game years ago, but I got completely stuck. I didn't know about that, being able to have all the NINPO. It seems like you're not supposed to fight the final boss form with just your sword. It seems ridiculous. But it's very, very easy if you do what I did. So yeah, just fire these and move forward with them. And you get hit by a few spikes. They're not insta-kills. They just take off a little bit of life. And it's pretty generous with checkpoints. So you can kind of just bust through a lot of the game. Now there's going to be some tricky platforming later in the game, but that doesn't come up for a while. So yeah, here I thought maybe I had to go up, but you just have to drop in this hole here. Or go to the left, actually. I think the hole will kill you, but either way. So yeah, this part I died several times. It's a little tricky, because the enemies try to knock you into the pits. So you got to be careful with the birds and some of the bullshit moving around, but just keep throwing out your magic. Now, a lot of these enemies take 2 hits, so be a little bit careful. Don't rush forward too fast. The blue ones take 2 hits. The red-shirted ones take 1 hit. So, birds, of course, take 1 hit, but try to proceed carefully. You can get hit a few times here. It doesn't really matter because there's no pits, but once you get around pits, you got to inch the screen very carefully sometimes. See, those birds will really fuck you up, so be careful with that. Try to lure them out by jumping forward a little and back to kind of lure them out and clear them out before moving forward. As far as ledges, if you're holding up when you jump to a ledge, you'll grab onto it. And that's what you see me doing here. It's something you do need to do. And I guess I must have missed that death in editing, but you can see that the enemies will knock you into the holes. So you do want to be very careful with that in this area. Sometimes you can save yourself by grabbing onto the walls as you get knocked back, and you can bounce back off the wall like wall jump and save your ass. And sometimes it goes on for a while where you just keep wall jumping, getting hit, wall jumping, and sometimes you can recover, but it is dangerous to do that. But it's not always it's not always a death sentence. Sometimes you can save yourself from a fall by wall jumping off a wall. This is very easy. You'll see what I end up doing. See, first I'm standing on the ground and shooting my homing weapon, which works fine, I guess. But what I end up doing was this, which you'll see in a moment. I grabbed onto the ledge beneath him, and it hit him much faster, and it kept me a lot safer, it seemed. See, it was clearing out these enemies. If I would have done that from the beginning, it would have made it smoother. So, now that you've seen this video, when you get to this guy, if you want to make it a little bit simpler, just jump onto that ledge and just ram those fireballs up his ass. That's about it. I beat that one on the first time as well, just like the other one. Very, very easy boss. So yeah, one of the main enemies you're going to be trying to avoid with my strategy is those blue scrolls. You see, I just picked one up, and now I have that shitty shuriken, right? So it's a lot worse than what I had. So now I have to use this until I can find the homing weapon again. So, I mean, that's the consequence of getting sloppy, I don't know if I intended to pick that up. I might have been experimenting still with different weapons just to see what the other weapons did, but I can tell you after playing the game that none of the weapons are as good as that homing weapon, and it really destroys the final bosses. All the bosses, really. So, and not just the bosses, it really clears your path for you as you're moving through. the stages, you can really just blaze through the stages a lot of times. Now, of course, the platforming stages are going to be a different story, the difficult platforming sections, but it will help a lot even with those. So strangely enough, when you go down in this area, there is a checkpoint down in this sewer, in the bottom portion of the sewer. You wouldn't think there would be, but there actually is. Now, you're not going to see the editing transition because I edited it way too cleanly to where you can't even see it unless you look at my health bar. And that wasn't really intentional. I mean, I usually try to edit pretty cleanly, but it just it was totally unnoticeable, unless you're looking at the life bar. So you're not going to see the transition. Just if you look at the life bar, you'll see it fill up you'll see it fill up in a moment, and that's the checkpoint. So you look at my life bar in the top right corner as I move. Now watch, after I kill these enemies, I move a little, boom, the life bar fills up. That's an edit. I died there several times, but that's a checkpoint. So you respawn right there when you die, right around that area. So you will get a checkpoint there. Not that this is that difficult or anything. The reason this was a little bit more challenging is because I lost that great weapon I had. Now I got it back. And of course, the way it looks, it looks like a domino. It's those 4 fireballs in a symmetrical type of pattern. So yeah, when you get that, keep that shit. Don't even get the other weapons. Don't bother with that shit. Because you don't need any ammo pickups, and you don't need any other weapon for the game. So your main enemy is really going to be avoiding those scrolls. Because that could fuck you up if you get a bad weapon. Then you have to do it the hard way, Especially the end. I wouldn't want to fight the last bosses without this weapon. It's probably a big pain in the ass. And I don't have a strategy for it without this weapon. Because this was the strategy I used. And, what I recommend. It made it very easy for me when I did it. So yeah, you actually got to go up here. It's not clear, but that's where you got to go. But it's pretty generous with checkpoints. Now, if you lose all your lives and go out to the continue screen, you do sometimes start back a few checkpoints back. You get to start a little closer, just like the NES games. You get to start at the most recent checkpoint if you just lose a life. But if you lose all your lives and go out to the continue screen, you may be sent back a few checkpoints. But it never sends you back that far. The game is very, very forgiving, especially for a Ninja Gaiden game. Now, I was experimenting again here with the fire wheels, which are kind of cool. They're nice because you can kind of just jump through enemies. So it's kind of cool, but I mean, it's not a good offensive weapon at all. You can't really damage bosses with it very well, so it's kind of shitty for that. It's not going to hold up well for my run. So you will see me get the homing thing again. But I was experimenting with fire wheels, and it's not bad, but it's not going to be good for the boss fights. I'm sure the bosses, most of them have simple enough patterns to where you could just fight them with the sword, I'm sure. But, why bother if you don't have to? Plus, the last boss, the final form, seems very fucking hard with just the sword. I wouldn't recommend that at all. Unless you're trying to do a challenge run or something. But, this game is not that fucking good to where it's really worth doing challenge runs. I mean, the control's pretty good, but it doesn't control as well as the NES games. And the levels are not as cool, not as good, But it's a good game. But it doesn't have the music, the tight controls, and all like the NES games. But this is actually a very good game for the Sega Master System, which has mostly mediocre games, I find. So for that system, this is actually quite a solid game. One of the better games on the system, I would say. Because it is a pretty good game. I mean, this would be a decent NES game. Wonder Boy 3 Dragon's Trap is my favorite game on the Master System. And I think that's an awesome game. That holds up to the best NES games, I think. But now this is not quite on that level. So yeah. So you see, I only have the fire wheels because I fucked up and I got this weapon. So I think I just make use out of it, and I just do a very aggressive strategy for most of the fight where I don't even dodge anything. And it was working okay, strangely enough, but not that great. I needed to eventually get out of there. I mean, you can do this to speed up the initial portion of the fight like I did, but then you're going to have to fight, actually fight him. But it's very easy to fight him. All you have to do is just lure him to charge at you and then just strike him once. So you just get a little distance, he'll strike him once to counter it. It's very, very easy. And you can do that the whole time if you want. It'll just take longer. It's just a slow fight, kind of tedious, but very, very easy. If he gets too close to you, jump up on the wall and jump over his head and go back to the other side of the screen and repeat. Very, very easy. It's worth speeding it up by fighting him a little bit. But, if you kept the homing weapon like I recommended, you would have been beating the shit out of that guy by just spamming the homing missiles or homing fire, at the beginning of the fight, and then just switch to the other side of the screen and use it again. I'm sure that would work great. See, now I have shitty weapons, so that's why I wasn't, able to really take full advantage of that. But the homing NINPO is awesome. It's great. It really dominates this game. And it gets to the point where the only parts that I found to be a little tricky were a few of the platforming segments later on. But that was about it. And nothing was that hard for me because, it only took me an hour and 20 minutes. So didn't give me a lot of trouble at any point. But in the past, I really, really struggled I couldn't beat it because of the final form of the final boss. So I think just knowing this trick that I explained about the NINPO is going to give most players that edge, that information that they need to be able to beat the game. And there's not going to be a hell of a lot to explain, but there is some more stuff to explain. There's a few small, subtle details on the later stages. But it's a pretty fun game. It's a good game. I liked it. I mean, the final form of the final boss is definitely some fucking bullshit, though. It's pretty fucking cheap. I mean, I think if I fought it with the sword again, I would have thought it was definitely bullshit again, But like I said, this time I knew it was coming up this time. So I even checked the video and I saw the homing NINPO worked pretty damn well in the final bosses. So that was why I kind of decided. Plus, when I tried it out, I was like, I could see this thing fucking just destroys everything on the screen pretty much. As long as you advance carefully. There are going to be some parts where you want to move faster, some of the harder platforming parts, but you can still play carefully with this weapon. But yeah, you want to try to avoid those scrolls because you really don't want to switch weapons if you can avoid it. Try to keep firing it out and just move forward with it so it takes out whatever, like I was saying. No need to try to run aggressively, unless you're doing a speed run or something, but it's easy enough to just do this. You can take a lot of damage. The main thing that's going to probably kill you is if you get knocked into a pit by the enemies because they're placed, in sneaky ways like the NES game, except the NES game is way, way worse with that shit. It's way harder, way more aggressive game. But the NES game does have the much tighter control. The control here is a little bit floaty. You jump a little bit too far and too high. It's kind of it kind of makes you feel like you're floating a little bit. It just doesn't feel as tight. And, regular enemies taking 2 hits also slows down the pacing of the game. In Ninja Gaiden, you could really get a flow going. For the NES, you could really get a flow going by, popping the enemies off in one hit and just keep moving and busting through. And you kind of know where to get damaged in Ninja Gaiden, to get knocked over the platforms and stuff like that. You just keep moving. And if you're interested in that, check out my tutorials for Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 for the NES. I have a complete commentary tutorial I did on those as well. The third one I beat the Japanese version only, which is pretty much it's just a much easier version of the NES one. Since it has unlimited continues, and I think you take less damage too, so it's easier. It's more in line with the other games, but it's a lot easier, I think, than Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 on the NES. But if you're playing the American version of Ninja Gaiden 3 for NES, that's probably the hardest one with the limited continues. But yeah, this is pretty standard. So yeah, very easy. I didn't even try to fight this properly. Again, all I did was stay in the corner and spam homing. This was my first time getting here, so I just did a very sloppy technique. And, I was just looking at the life bars and I knew, he's not going to change his pattern. And as long as I'm doing more damage to him than he is to me, I'm going to win. It's obvious. So, I did this from the start. Most of the bosses you're going to be able to completely bullshit with this method, so that's why I recommend having this weapon and getting the infinite ammo. So that way you always have a full, you don't have to worry about running out of ammo. You really don't have to use your sword much at all for this playthrough, with this tactic. So now this area has some of the worst ice controls I've played in the game as far as slipping around. It's extremely slippery. I don't know why. It's just like it slides you off like really fucking fast. It's not really that difficult once you just play it carefully and know what to expect, but it feels kind of shitty, the control. So see, when you fall, a lot of times you can save yourself if you're ready to wall jump off of a wall. You just got to be ready to do that. If you're not expecting it, then you'll probably just fall. But if you catch yourself before you fall, you can sometimes climb yourself out of it. But yeah, send out the fireballs as you move, as I've been recommending. But you're going to really want to do it a lot on here, and you're going to really want to be careful not to be pushing forward as you land, because you'll just keep sliding into shit, as you see me doing. It's really bad ice control. But luckily, there's not a huge, this is only one stage, so it's not too bad, but it is kind of irritating, the sliding around. This is a checkpoint right here, so at least you don't have to do that part again. So yeah, a lot of these larger enemies will take 2 hits with the homing fireball, so just be aware of that. You don't want to only fire it once and move forward, because then they'll just hit you. But as long as you get some of them you can skip, so you don't have to worry about it. But you got plenty of time, so you don't have to worry about the timer. You can actually walk while crouched in this game, so do that. If you have, if you already got hit and you're flashing invincible, then just run through the guys while you're flashing, invincible. The NES ones did this as well, I think, and it's something you want to take advantage of in games. Now the move I used just there was accidental, but if you press both buttons 1 and 2 at the same time, you'll do a screen clearing move, but it wastes your health. So usually I only do it on accident, but there is one part of the game that I recommend using on. It's a later part with lava, and I recommend it for that part only. But other than that, I probably would avoid using it, because it drains a lot of your health, so it's not really worth using it too much. You get enough checkpoints, but still. So yeah, here you just want to be aware of, the straight surfaces. You'll slide around a lot. That's why you see me kind of just hopping around and releasing the directional pad when I jump, because I don't really like sliding around. But yeah, you slide very easily. So if you just take your time and kind of hop through with your homing fireballs, you'll have that extra protection while moving forward. It'll clear out a lot of the shit. Just got to take it slow. You want to slide through there or crawl through there and just jump up. It's easy. But see, if you're moving too fast, you'll slide into those spikes, so you just want to take it slow. So yeah, for this boss, I think I died once on this boss, but all you have to do is, again, you just do the easiest shit of just standing here and spamming your homing weapon. You probably don't even need to jump those spikes that I was jumping. You can probably just not even do that. Now, when he appears on top of your body, just get back in this corner here. Just to be safe so you don't get knocked into the pit. I don't think you will, but just it's safe if you stay all the way back. You can stay all the way back from the beginning. You don't have to, wait to do that. So you'll just take a few hits when he spawns on top of you, but you can just keep spamming the attack. Like I said, most of these bosses are dead easy with this technique. You don't have to have any skill at all. You can just spam it. If you're using a rapid fire controller like I was, you can just hold the sword button and then hold up, and you'll continuously spam homing NINPO. So yeah, this is one of the hardest stages, but it is getting near the end of the game. So for this part, when you get to this part right here that I'm going to show, you want to use the screen flash move. It's a little farther, but jump over that guy. But now this part's tough. Keep moving forward, but when you get here, use your screen clearing like that, and it'll get rid of those flames. But see, unfortunately, I didn't do it fast enough, and I got hit. But if you can get past that, you can take it slowly and beat the rest of this area pretty easily. And this is one of the hardest parts of the game. This is the part that took me the longest. I use save and load states to practice this part. I recommend using save and load states on sections that you're dying a lot that are giving you trouble. Just use it to practice and then commit suicide once you've learned it decently. And, it'll send you back wherever it sends you, and then just play from there, and you already know what to do. So that's what I did. I always like to practice these games with save and load state. But you just got to be careful that the lava's not at its highest level when you jump, because it'll, of course, burn you, and then you'll fall in the pit and die. So you just got to watch that lava and make sure it's not, it's staying at the lower area. It goes through 2 phases where the lava, it kind of goes up and down at a lower area, and then it goes up and down at a little bit of a higher area, and that's when you can get burned. So you want to wait until it's in the lower, burning the lower portion of the screen. But that's one of the hardest parts in the game. So, if you got past that, you're doing very well at this point. You're not going to have a problem beating the game. So yeah, I still like firing these fireballs out as I move most of the time. But if you do get hit occasionally, you at least have room a lot of times to break out of it and keep moving. So you don't have to be super careful. Try to clear out as much shit as you can as you move, though. For this part, keep moving. Of course, try to avoid picking up any power-ups, because you don't want to accidentally get, the wrong weapon. It's going to make shit a lot harder. It can be tricky with these flames trying to follow you. But I was able not to get hit in that segment, so that was good. So this is the checkpoint before the boss of the level. If you lose a continual, you'll be sent back to this area. But if you lose lives, you'll get to start at various different segments. I think the next checkpoint is at the actual boss. The boss is very, very easy, yet again, but sometimes he does pull some bullshit. But aside from that, you'll get through very easily, though. Eventually. You may die a few times, but it is very easy. So sometimes in this area, I just take the hits and I just keep moving. Just be aware of what's going on. Don't get burned by the lava when it's high up. So this is the boss. Very easy boss. All you got to do is stay on the opposite end of the screen and fire your homing. And now he's going to come to your side of the screen. Just move back to the opposite side. Keep firing your homing. Same shit is going to happen again. So you just keep repeating this pattern. And the only time that I would die on this guy was sometimes he dissolves like most of the platform. So make sure you're standing as far with your back like right up against the wall, so that you can avoid falling if the platform gets too short when he dissolves it. I died a few times because of it. I think if my back was all the way against the wall, I probably wouldn't have died. So you may get unlucky if your back's not all the way up against the wall, or maybe he will dissolve the entire platform, but I don't think he does that. But, this guy be very, very easy to beat on the first try. It's a very, very easy boss. And in this game, if you lose a life, you always start on the boss. Whatever boss form you got to. The only boss that has 2 forms is the final boss, and for that, if you lose a continue, you may have to start back at the first form, but as far as your lives go, you will start on the last form you got to, so it's pretty forgiving. Of course, if you, like I said, you lose a continue, you're sent back to the last stage checkpoint. So yeah, this is basically the final stage of the game. Even though there is another chapter, it's just a boss fight. So I would say this is the final actual stage. The final real stage of the game. And it does have a tricky platforming part near the end, but it's really not much harder than anything else that we dealt with so far. So it shouldn't give you too much trouble. The wall jumps can kind of fucking irritate me sometimes because, they make me fly off in the opposite direction. Like I said, the control really is not great, but it's alright. It's a little floaty, and it's not the most precise. That's another reason why I kind of move slower through this game, too, because it doesn't seem to have that hit detection and that crisp control of the NES games. A lot of times, if you try to strike those scrolls to get power-ups, your sword goes right through them, and they don't break. And I think it's a similar thing for trying to strike enemies sometimes. It just doesn't have like the best hit detection. But if you're not using your sword, it's not too much of a problem. Like, I barely ever use my sword in this playthrough, so it's not too much of an issue. But yeah, when you see those spinning blades, you got to go down and go around the other way. They almost look like background shit, but yeah, you can't touch those. And yeah, for this part of the game, I'll just reiterate again, avoid picking up any power-ups. If you're close to a power-up, just be aware of firing your homing shot, because it will break fire. It'll break open the power-ups if it's in the line of fire. So just be aware of that. You really don't want to get power-ups at this point in the game, because you may get stuck with a shitty weapon for the final boss. If you get stuck in that checkpoint with the wrong weapon, there's no way around it. You're just going to start at the final bosses with a shitty weapon. Then you'll have to replay the whole game again, or just learn to make use of whatever weapon you happen to have. But it may be extremely difficult, because I remember, I think I was fighting the final boss form with just the sword, or I may have had a shitty NINPO, but whatever the case was, it was like a brick wall. I could not beat that final form back then. So, just a word of warning, make sure you have this homing. If you don't have it, look everywhere for it in those scrolls and make sure you get it. It pops up fairly often, but I'm not sure exactly where it's located in this stage. But I recommend that if you somehow, for some reason, you did lose it, make sure you get it back before going any farther. Because the last bosses are coming up soon. So these are disappearing platforms. You're just going to jump, against the walls and try to time it so you can land on them. I was fucking around here because I wanted to see... Well, actually, no. Actually, I was fucking around there, but it's not in this video because I edited out my deaths. When I first got there, I was fucking around trying to get all the scrolls for some reason. I think I was trying to get a homing NINPO. I think I lost it or something. I may have had a shitty weapon or something. I don't remember why I was looking through the scrolls. For some reason, I wanted to get a different weapon. But yeah, nothing too tricky here. Just wait for the spikes to be gone before, wall jumping. As long as you're patient, it's very easy. And firing out those homing fireballs, whenever you're about to move forward, always fire them out. Because it's like a safeguard from any bullshit like bats and shit like that come off screen. If you don't know the game, it's good to do that, because otherwise, you're going to get blindsided by bullshit. So drop down here and grab that wall and then jump, and you'll get to that platform you need to get to. Of course, you got to be holding up to grab onto the platform, obviously. This really isn't hard. I got a little sloppy, but... So yeah, there's a tricky platforming part coming up after this whole segment. And this part's not hard. Just want to latch onto these platforms. Use your homing to try to clear that out if you can. You may take a few hits, but it's not a big deal. There are some of that green shit will slow you down a little bit. It's kind of annoying. But, like I said, this part is very easy. You're going to have an enemy that takes like 4 hits or so at the end of this area, but as long as you get rid of those flames, you have plenty of time to take out that enemy. Just stand where the spikes are not at and just hit them with your sword or use the homing with either one. So yeah, for here, again, you're going to drop down and wall jump to get to that platform, and then just wall jump your way into this next area. Now this next area has some tricky platforming with disappearing blocks. So there are multiple ways. You can even take a bottom path. There's a few different ways you can do this part, but if you do miss the platforms, try to grab onto the next one and save yourself. Because if you stand where those spikes are, you'll get bounced into the holes. It's very annoying. So like I said, see, I missed it, but I'm able to save here. I can save myself on that platform by grabbing that one, that gray one. Now here I almost died, but I was able to wall jump my way out of that. The bottom path is the more dangerous one because of all the holes, but if you get down here, you can still survive. It's definitely a lot more dangerous. Look how close I was to death there. Barely survived it, but I got lucky. I was able to save myself. But yeah, I recommend taking the upper path and not the lower, but if you don't have a choice, if you mess up, you may have to take that lower path. But you just have to be kind of patient, and you have to kind of plan ahead. If you miss grabbing one of the platforms, you got to be ready to try to get to another platform and latch onto it real fast. And then climb up on that one and jump out of that area real fast, you know. You want to keep moving. So for this guy, you may lose a life when you first get here because your health will be lower, but you'll respawn here since you'll have, you get to start at the bosses with your regular lives. So just stand here again and spam your homing missiles. Your homing weapon, just keep spamming it, and that wins. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to try to fight them. Nothing. And if you have 3 lives when you get here, you'll be in good shape because if you die, you will be able to get the start at these final bosses right here. Actually, no matter what, even if you lose a continue now, you're going to start at this first form of the final boss. So yeah, same shit here. You don't really have to dodge much at all here. So if you want, you can jump off the wall and fire your homing, and that'll give you a better chance of dodging those fire waves like that. But I didn't bother a lot of times because I just didn't give a shit. You know, I knew I was going to win. I had enough lives to kind of to deal with it because you'll get your lives back if you waste a continue anyway. But I do end up going into the final form with really bad health, and I did a really cheap technique like I'm doing here, and I was still able to beat the final form. So if you have the full health, which you should have, if you die. You're going to be able to beat this final form even easier than what I did here. You'll see I barely beat it because I only had like half health. But all I did was stand in the left corner basically and spam this shit. I might even try to dodge. So, again, all I did was spam shit pretty much. So, even with half health, it's possible to beat it just by not even trying to fight it properly. Just, stand in the corner and spam your move. So that's why I said, keep this homing weapon for the whole game because it really destroys everything in the game. And you see I only had 1 piece of health left, but it was good enough. Now, had I died, I would have started at that guy with a full health bar anyway, so it would have been even easier. But, I mean, the bosses don't get much fucking easier than these bosses with the homing magic. I mean, they have pretty simple patterns anyway, except for that final guy. He seems to be a huge pain in the ass. If you're trying to fight him with just a sword or with some kind of, shitty kind of magic. But yeah, the game's not really too hard, and with these strategies, as you make it, really easy to complete this game. If you have any other questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.